The music business has been shocked to its core by surprising news from Miami. Cameron and Jim Jones, the famed pillars of Dipset, have reportedly been imprisoned after a violent backstage altercation that left security stunned. Multiple sources are stating that what was intended to be a celebratory reunion performance deteriorated into a full-fledged brawl between two former brothers, leaving attendees breathless and the hip-hop industry completely stunned. Fists were thrown, heated words were exchanged, and what followed was sheer chaos, according to eyewitnesses. A furious debate about the performance order quickly evolved into something considerably more nasty, with damaged equipment, shattered egos, and flashing police lights. Within minutes, Cameron and Jim were allegedly detained and dragged away as cameras filmed on social media exploded, with many admirers speculating if this genuinely marked the end of Dipset. What could have caused such a spectacular fall? Two titans remain tuned, because what happens next isn't just breathtaking. It's true emotional drama that no one anticipated, and trust us, this is just what was supposed to be a night of celebration. Fans came to watch the long-awaited reunion of Dipset, which featured Cameron, Jim Jones, Jules Santana, and Freaky Zeke. The place was alive with nostalgia, with individuals wearing old Dipset gear, playing classic music on their phones, and trading anecdotes about how artists sparked an entire era of hip-hop. But no one realized that tension had been building behind the scenes for weeks, and it was set to shatter tonight in a manner that would alter everything. About midnight, murmurs started to circulate, rapidly morphed into heated social media messages, and video footage from backstage started to appear. It was difficult to grasp what was going on due to the wobbly camera and blurry faces, muted displays, but one thing was clear: Cameron and Jim Jones were in the middle. A furious debate, and it wasn't just verbal. Chairs were overturned, equipment was. People viewing the film couldn't believe it when two brothers, who had previously been inseparable, were now fighting just minutes before they were supposed to approach the stage together. Supporters were astonished and bewildered. According to sources, the conflict began over anything as little as a change in the set list. Apparently, Jim Jones wanted to open the show with his solo hit "We Fly High," but Cameron insisted on a classic Dipset group track. Had been a petty disagreement escalated out of hand as old wounds were revived. Jim accused Cam of continually trying to dominate the spotlight, while Cam responded for Jim's treachery by going solo. As the group was, things quickly escalated, and the room was crammed with security officers, assistants, and hairdressers. All were trying to defuse the situation, but neither was backing down. One crew member recalled how insults evolved into shaves and then into fists. As we saw a family crumble right in front of us, the battle was more than just physical. Emotional, both males uttered things that had clearly been restrained for years. Jim apparently screamed, "You abandoned me when I needed you the most," while Cam remarked, "You have always been. They are jealous of me." Admitted, those closest to the group feel that while they had previously reconciled publicly, things were never totally patched up behind closed doors. Tonight, all the frothy smiles, forced interviews were undone in a matter of seconds as the mayhem erupted backstage and the audience in front surged. The ceremony had been delayed for more than an hour, and onlookers started to become nervous, murmuring, perplexed by what was going on. Little did they understand that their favorite artists were handcuffed just a few feet away. Cops had arrived after security called in to report a violent incident that had harmed two staff workers, one with a damaged lip and the other with an injured wrist, attempted to separate Cam and Jim. When officials arrived on the scene, they observed both rappers clearly bruised and still yelling at one another as they taken away. The clip of their arrest quickly got viral. Someone on the crew, Cameron, was recorded being released in handcuffs, his face flushed with rage. Jim Jones came quickly, his chain ripped and his voice from yelling. A crowd outside the venue watched in disbelief as the two were brought away in separate police vehicles. Fans screamed, others implored them to stop, while others merely documented the moment in startled silence. What was meant to be a joyful return has instead become a nightmare. The story was promptly picked up by the media headlines such as Dipset. Cameron and Jim Jones are detained following a brawl backstage during the reunion, which ends in mayhem. People on social media started distributing old video clips of the pair laughing together in interviews, reminiscing about their relationship and comparing it to the recent catastrophic rupture. For many fans, the betrayal, a Twitter user said, "We grew up with DIP said, it seems like our big brothers are fighting." The internet was overwhelmed with replies, some astonished, some indignant, and a few they claimed they spotted this coming from a mile away. Cam and Jim did not say anything to each other in prison that night, were placed in different holding cells, and although their legal teams arrived quickly, the damage had already been done. According to people close to the incident, both guys were terrified not just by the combat, but also by the awareness of how far. According to one account, they had fallen. Jim continued to pace, wondering how. Things having come to this point, merely sat with his head down. It was the stillness following the storm that shouted louder than any fist could. Jules Santana, who was about to when the incident broke out in his dressing area, he allegedly tried to intervene once he sensed things were becoming heated, but by Joel shouted, "Not like this, man, not after everything we have gone through." His voice shook as he saw two of his closest friends being taken away. Cops, the photo agitated him, and sources believe he dropped down backstage. Needing to be consoled by his teammates, the consequences was rapid. Sponsor-supported customers from the tour requested refunds, and concert planners started to rethink future DIP events business. Experts thought that this may be the last nail in the coffin. They were already on thin ice, stated one promoter. This may be the end. Social media just increased the drama. Fans debated who was to blame, with some blaming Cameron for being excessively controlling and others accusing Jim of being insecure and arrogant. But regardless of which side they chose, the result was obvious. Dipset, "We felt it may be over." Despite the chaos, there were voices begging for peace. Fellow musicians utilized social media to express their sadness and wish for peace, with one tweet saying, "Come on Dipset, you're all larger than this. Repair it before it's too late." Another commented, "Hip-hop needs you all together, not ripped apart like this." It was unknown if such statements would reach Cam and Jim. As the dust settled and the population attempted to comprehend what had just happened, one thing became clear: nothing would ever be the same again. When everyone believed the drama had reached its peak, something unexpected occurred the next morning. A leaked voicemail started circulating online. Reportedly, Jim Jones' voice in the message was captured mere hours after the fight, when he was still in custody. Low, tired, and in pain, he spoke carefully as if each word was weight. "I'm not furious with Cam, dude," he said. "I'm mad at myself. We failed to meet the expectations of our fans and DIP." The sounds that no one can confirm was authentic had initially spread like wildfire. By midday, famous hip-hop websites have reprinted it with headlines like "Jim Jones regrets everything" and the conclusion of "Dipset strikes harder than we expected." Fans were split, and several individuals felt empathy after hearing the guilt. Others questioned if the message was a planned effort to gain public support, but behind the moments, things were much more chaotic than everyone had imagined. "I hadn't mentioned anything publicly, no tweets, Instagram stories, or even a cryptic," according to those close to him. He was enraged not just by the fight, but also about how quickly Jim's group started damage control. He believes Jim's trying to twist the story. One source said Cam felt duped throughout. In the meanwhile, Joel Santana was doing all he could to prevent coming apart completely. He began reaching out to all sides, asking them to meet and clear the air, but neither Cam nor Jim were prepared. They were both emotionally overwhelmed by years of unresolved tension. Even Crazy Ziki, who had previously offered humorous relief, felt evident that Cameron pushed Jim into a stack of speaker cases, and Jim struck back, knocking over a table. The film stayed quiet, but the cruelty screamed for itself. Fans were horrified to see more video shows crew members hurting to break up the confrontation with Jules, jumping in and attempted to pull Jim away as a security officer slammed the camera back against the wall. The film rekindled the internet. Hashtags like #DipsetDownfall and #CamJim began. Trending news sites seized on it, scrutinizing each shot like a sports replay. Body language experts even chipped in, saying that Cam's viewpoint revealed deep-seated dissatisfaction. While Jim's movement indicated emotional instability, it became a media circus. Memes spread, interviews were requested, and talk programs started referring to the fight as the week's biggest pop cultural event. But behind the scenes, the impacts were getting more. The label that financed the Dipset tour has placed everything on hold for the future. Concerts were canceled, contracts were frozen, and all reunion-related merchandise was taken from shops, and the insider characterized the situation as a financial catastrophe. Cam's team blamed Jim, alleging that his rage had destroyed everything. Jim's crew faulted Cam, portraying him as deceptive and dominant. Stuck in the midst were dozens of laborers, dancers, and tech crew. People who had been banking on the tour for employment were now jobless. Cameron, renowned for his volcanic tongue and scoffing retorts, finally, 2 days later, he broke his quiet by sharing a black screen on Instagram. Sometimes, quiet speaks more than words. Supporters were confused. Was it shade, acceptance, or the end of conjecture in the comments? Some called for a ceasefire, while others condemned Cam of being passive-aggressive. Meanwhile, Jim Jones released a short Instagram live video, visibly distressed, stating, "We're meant to be legends, not headlines. I'm sorry of how I behaved. I lost my cool, but I'm not only one." As expected, this merely added gasoline to the fire. Cam's fans blamed Jim of gaslighting. Jim's fans supported him, arguing that at the very least he was confessing his flaws. In the midst of all this turmoil, Dipset's legacy was steadily fading, and radio stations deleted Dipset tracks from their playlists. Regular playlists unclear how the audience will react. Podcasts devoted entire portions to the fight, with some suggesting that it was the most public group disintegration since the NWA. Others related in reference to the unit's downfall. One presenter observed, "This is what happens when the ego is unbridled for too long." Then came the greatest surprise of all. A lady come forward, claiming that she saw the assault and that it was Cameron. And Jim Jones claimed that it is not about music, but rather about a lady. Had been romantically connected with the same woman for a long time, and current circumstances had revived that disagreement. Jim discovered Cam had discreetly rejoined with her, which sparked the confrontation backstage. Nobody could authenticate her story, but the internet didn't care since it was so fantastic. Just the kind of surprise fans longed for. Memes exploded again, this time showing people joke that Dipset was the next reality TV drama, while others expressed dismay, arguing that two idols should never sacrifice decades of tradition for a woman. But regardless of whether the story was genuine, and it shifted the narrative so that viewers weren't just witnessing, they couldn't keep their look away from the cam as they saw lives disintegrate in real time. Jim was now free on bail, but the judge ordered them not to meet one another until the case was over. The irony was not missed on anybody. Two people who had previously toured the globe together could no longer be in the same room. Attorneys were engaged, damage control teams worked hard, and the hip-hop community waited to see. As one experienced musician noted in a radio broadcast, this is sad. But just as things looked to be at their lowest ebb, a startling phone call was made. Created one that no one anticipated, and that would affect everything moving ahead as the days went, and as the population waited with excitement. Tensions grew behind the scenes between Cameron, and Jim Jones was dealing with more than just emotional burnout. He was also dealing with the ramifications of his fans, the media, and even their closest friends were divided on what had happened. But the truth was that no one understood what the future held for Dipset. Could they save what remained of their legacy, or was the damage irreversible? Cameron, renowned for his placid demeanor, had been uncharacteristically quiet after even his social media pages, which were generally full of cryptic remarks and puns, had gone eerily quiet. Those who had supported him for years in particular were frightened that had never seen Cameron like this before. He was usually the one to lighten the atmosphere and turn drama into humor. But his post lacked humor, and he wasn't even posting. The silence was louder than any on the other side. Jim Jones was more forthright in his remarks. The Twitter account was filled with messages about the event, including apologies to fans and Dipset supporters. Even Cameron, "It's been a difficult path, but I'm learning and growing." A tweet from, however, fans were not completely persuaded, and some praised him for acknowledging his misdeeds, while some claimed it was just another trick to recapture the admiration he had lost. "Real men acknowledge when they're mistaken," one admirer says, "but it doesn't alter the fact that the harm has already been done. We will not forget what happened, Jim." The many replies seemed to give gasoline to the fire. Regardless of the turmoil and public disagreement, there remained an air of inevitability. The major issue hovered over everything. Would Dipset split up? Was this the end of one of the most iconic hip-hop and icons of all time? Rumors arose among others, claiming that Cameron and Jim Jones hadn't spoken in days, and others saying that a reconciliation was feasible, but only if certain criteria were met. Fans were divided. Some still believed in the group's power and the bond that had brought them together years before others did. Missile, their loyalty was shaken at its heart. Meanwhile, Jules Santana always worked as a go-between for the two, finding himself caught in the center of everything. According to individuals close to Joel, was shocked and hurt by the environment he had fought so hard to maintain. Cam and Jim were at peace, and it seemed like all of his efforts were despite his fury. Joe was determined to make things right. Julius knew that if there was any hope of setting things right, it had to begin with him, so he took affairs into taking matters into his own hands. He called Cameron and Jim Jones separately in the hopes of arranging. He understood it had to be face-to-face, no more phone conversations. The cryptic messages had to be real, and Jules was willing to do whatever to. After a few challenging days, Jules was able to bring Cameron and Jim Jones into the same room. The occasion was crucial, and the two agreed to talk for the first time since the catastrophe. But when they finally sat down, the mood was Cameron, known for his sharp tongue and quick wit, was unusually anxious. In contrast, Jim Jones was more forthright, stating that he had been pondering implications of his behavior and he was prepared to face anything. The room was unnaturally calm as the two men sat across from one another, the weight of their history and current upheaval hanging heavy in the air. Cameron finally finished the quiet. His voice was calm, yet had a particular edge to it, you know. Jim started cautiously. "I never expected to be sitting here with you after what happened. You mistreated me." Not only, and Jim Jones was stung in front of both fans and family members. "I can't take anything back, but now that I might want to address this because I want us to get through this, Cam. I apologize." Cameron paused for a while, as if evaluating his options. After a long he paused and replied, "You've mentioned that before, Jim, but actions speak louder. More than words." It was clear that there was still a lot of pain and distrust between them, yet as the session went it looked that reconciliation was conceivable. They recalled their shared history, particularly the times when Dipset was at the height of the rap game. They laughed, recalled, and for a few minutes, it seemed like they were back in studio together making beauty. But reality suddenly smacked the hurt that had been done, and recuperation would not be straightforward. Meanwhile, fans were still waiting. Cameron and Jimmy Jones' public comments kept them in anticipation. They sought answers. They wanted to know whether Dipset was actually over or if they could sort it out. Followers went to social media in droves awaiting an update. One admirer tweeted, "You both hurt the fans. You now need to solve this." The tension was mounting. Cameron and Jim Jones could not hide eternally. Finally, the time arrived. Cameron published a new message on Instagram. It was short, but talked a lot at moments. "Our strongest relationships have been tested, and we have been through a lot. We will figure it out and remain." Jim Jones followed suit with his own serious talk message. "We've been down too long, but we're stronger than this." Staying with us. While communications did not present precise answers, instead, they supplied followers with hope. "I hope that Dipset wasn't done after all, but the issue remained. Was it, can the fans forgive them for the public exhibition of discord and betrayal? Or had Cameron and Jim Jones went too far, destroying the organization beyond repair?" In the following days would tell more, but for the time being, everything was unknown. The hop community kept a close watch on the narrative as it unfolded. Cameron and Jim Jones, two rap heavyweights who once ruled the game together, are now competing for their legacy. Well, they find a Dipset was finally finished, and news of the Backstage skirmish traveled like wildfire. The hip-hop business was shook to its core by Cameron and Jim Jones. Two of the founding members of the renowned group Dipset were involved in a violent incident that no one could have. Many fans, media outlets, and even their professional colleagues were astonished by the fight's details. What had began as a night of celebration quickly turned into mayhem, and it looked that Dipset's the future was at jeopardy. The Backstage incident was reported to have escalated quickly, fueled by years of unsolved, according to sources. The two artists exchanged insults before a violent altercation broke out. Cameron and Jim Jones were immediately imprisoned as a consequence of the incident. Was described as intense, with both performers reportedly swinging fists and producing a scene that could not be. Witnesses at the incident said that security had to interfere, but damage had already been done, and the altercation not only left an indelible stamp on the occasion, but fans wondered if the two recognized